Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and today we are bringing you an interview with Natasha Mann-Harwood, who is the heart of the Murder Lounge. Without her, this wouldn't have been a thing. It never would have been set up in the first place. Tasha, hello, welcome to the thing. Tash and I are both directors now of the company, and prior to starting this recording, we've been talking about theatre and how it's going to progress now that lockdown is starting to release, but at the same time there are theatres who are looking to newer technology in order to make things work. So Tash, what are your thoughts on where theatre can go from where we are now to maybe something more digital in the future?
I think that with having lockdown, I think a lot of live theatres have had to realise that online is a fantastic resource. The beautiful thing about creatives is when you put them in a bind, they become, creative with solutions. I've got a cat who's desperately trying to climb me.
It's something else that cats will become creative with solutions as well, as we're finding out tonight.
But yeah, and I think a lot of what we're going to start seeing, or at least I hope we're going to start seeing, is a lot more multimedia. A lot of live entertainment companies, especially like ourselves, they've gone online, which makes it so much more accessible for disabled people who are stuck in their own home. I think you were mentioning about sort of being able to then sell tickets for live shows, sell tickets for watching the live stream, and then also sell the event for people to watch over and over again.
I've always been very interested in video on the internet. It was because I've got a degree in multimedia, and it was where I started with that. That was I want to make videos that go on the internet. Of course, this was before YouTube was a thing. It was a glint in Google's eye, and the idea that you can have a production company that can film their production and stream their production in 1080p, sometimes in 4K if you've got the resources to do it, and have people buy tickets to see that. It's stuff that comedians are already doing. There's you can buy tickets to see a comedian do a show, and they're essentially doing a show against a green screen in their own home with webcams, so there's that angle to it, and then there's also the after sales. If you've recorded what you're streaming at the same time, you can then sell that on as a product, and the more products that you have, the more chances that people have got to click a button and go, I'm going to buy this thing because I like your company, then the more money that you're going to get in, and that's got to be a good thing for the arts, right?
Oh, it definitely does. And that's the thing. I mean, the arts is so valuable, and I think it's one of the most valuable industries out there, but it's also one of the most underappreciated industries. Just to bore some statistics here, it was worth something like 80 billion a year before the lockdown. It's been losing 1.5 billion a week during lockdown. But it's estimated that by 2024 it will have already gone back up to something like £30 billion industry again, that it will recover fast. I mean, historically it's wherever theatre goes, investment goes, because there's so many benefits to community and the local economy to have creativity, and it is a community-based industry, and it's essential for mental health. So it needs to, live entertainment needs to have more to it. It needs to have more money in it. It needs to have more access. And one of the things with the going online and things like that, and being able to sell it, the products online and record products, like you say, it's gonna bring in more money, which then just gives you more funding for shows, which then gives you more creativity and more outlet and more options. So I think it's going to be, I personally think it's a really exciting time. You've had a load of creative people stuck in their own home with nothing to do but to create.
Well, one of the things actually that would worry me about all of it is that the people who would tend to go to theatre end up being in the most vulnerable categories. And so, sure, theatres are going to be able to open technically the end of July, isn't it?
Yeah.
because all of the restrictions are meant to have gone by then. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to translate to people actually going to the theatre.
Yeah.
Or to the cinema, or, okay, we've seen a lot of people going to pubs, but there's a big difference between that kind of night out that you have when you're part of the theatre crowd and, going for a drink with friends. So I think for a while yet, we're going to have to find new, sometimes innovative ways of selling the stuff that we've got and funding the stuff that we've got as well.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the great things about the creative industry, is it's full of creative people and it's a collaborative industry. So I think, again, the creative industry is going to need to become more and more collaborative, especially if we're going to recover from what's happened with the pandemic. I mean, it's been a while since the live entertainment industry has been flawed like this. I mean, doing the research, it was something like Oliver Cromwell was the last time.
Yeah,
the
I can.
industry was
I can imagine
absolutely
that.
flawed.
I can imagine that.
Since then, it's been growing and growing and growing, and this is the first time it's been absolutely like devastated by the lockdown. But as I said before, I think it's going to come back with a vengeance. I really hope it does, and I'm really excited to be part of that. I really, really want to see that happen.
So, obviously, as directors, and with Avadny, who's the other director as well, we've all got things that we're interested in and things that we want to do. What's your main focus? What's the thing that is, if you could do anything, what's the thing that you go, yes, let's do that, let's pursue that as quickly and as vehemently as possible?
Ooh, I do want to. I mean, I want to get back to live performance, because that's got to be the most fun aspect. I've really enjoyed doing a lot of the voice work. What I want to do is I really, really want to embrace the multimedia aspect. If someone turned around to me and said, "You have as much budget's no option," what I would love to do, I think I was mentioning it earlier, is be able to have something where you have body cams on all the actors, and you have visuals all around, and the audience at home can interact with what's going on. I don't want to give too much away, because I don't want someone stealing the idea, but I want to explore that multimedia a lot more, and really sort of look at how we can bring online into that live environment, because I think that's quite exciting. And some of the other things that we're talking about have been able to do, like more innovative home games as well, that explores sort of multimedia. The biggest thing is budget and finances, isn't it? So,
well, I'm very interested about some of the projects that we've been talking about. And again, it's just finding different ways of taking what we're doing and what we can do and what we have a potential to do, and then pushing it out to either the same audience on a different platform or a completely different audience that hadn't thought about it in the first place. So those things are all just ridiculously interesting to me. But also, in terms of things like we don't often explore things outside our remit. So people who are in theatre and who like being in theatre don't often go, well, let's try and do film as well, because it's a whole different discipline. There's a whole different group of things to do. But we've got the ability to start doing that because we have got those talents among the group, so that's something that I think that
I would love to do multi-ending films where they can, like the Bandersnatch thing that they did with a murder mystery. I'd love to do something like that, where the audience gets to decide.
We can technically, we can do that. I know how to do
Don't
that.
tell me that.
But
I get too excited when I find out that I can do stuff like that.
But if you're going to do it, the cost to produce film, television, that sort of thing at a good enough quality is that's where we're going to fall down. It's finding that funding to do it as something new and different. So we will
give
need
us
to
money.
Have a look into that.
Give us
give
money.
us lots of money. That's what we want. So, in terms of sort of budgets and things, because this is where the whole thing kind of falls down, is that, we need to do something and we need to pay for something. You need to pay for actors, and if there's set designers and things like that, you need to pay for all of that. If there's music that needs to be written, that all needs to get paid for. What do you think about arts funding going forward? Where should it go? Has it become too stagnant or too difficult to get hold of?
It's certainly a challenge to get hold of arts funding. I know that there's a lot planned in terms of sort of boosting the arts, but it is very, very tough to find, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges that the arts faces. It's so hard to find arts funding. I mean, when we were looking for this particular project, we got very, very lucky in the fact that what we were planning to do happened to fall into the remit of the lottery funding for the COVID emergency fund. And we're already sort of looking to see what we can find for other pots of money, but it's so tough to find arts funding out there, and a lot of companies rely on investors and sponsors, but it's kind of that catch-22. You've got to be a big company to get investors and sponsors, but you can't become a big company without investors and sponsors, and it's one of the biggest challenges. And a lot of arts companies, like we started out, when I first started the journey on this, when I was first sort of just looking at the types of how the shows could work, was literally beg, borrow, steal. Not the steal, but the beg and borrow and do everything. I mean, the first show we had a
that is often
budget.
how it works, though, isn't it? I mean, when we were at college, it's the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
they don't have any money to do that, and even though they charge you 10 grand a year to be there,
Yeah.
you know, it's not an easy way to make a living, but you've got to find those ways of doing it, otherwise there won't be any more art, you know.
I remember emptying my entire flat once for a uni show that I put on because I didn't have any budget. So we raided my entire flat and emptied my living room for a living room scene. I had all my furniture on stage. I just remember the whole cast like walking down the road with my sofa.
I remember building a set, and it was for Crucible, and it was all made out of wood. And we had to nail these big planks of wood to a door so that we had an actual door in the set, and so that it wasn't too difficult to sort of hang the door. And we tried to lift this thing up, and we couldn't. And we nailed it to a table, which was concreted into the floor. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is community theatre.
Oh, the fun. But that's it. I mean, you know, we do need the funding. I mean, when you work in small theatre companies, you do get used to sort of having to work on a shoestring. Like I said earlier, my first show that I did under my old company, Action Adventure Theatre Productions, was £500. We had a £500 budget to create a massive horror show. It worked. We weren't able to do the justice that it deserved, but we literally kind of cobbled it together. We got 2 gazebos and we just like wrapped loads of material around them to make this horror maze. You know, and just some of the things you have to come up with in order to be able to create what you want, the vision, without any money is that's can be the biggest challenge. And of course, when moving forward, one of the priorities for us is we want to be able to pay our staff. We want to be able to create jobs and pay them fairly.
And we want to be able to pay ourselves as well, which sounds...
yeah, that's also a good thing.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's a... It sounds like it's a big thing, but this is a really big thing in business. If you can't afford to pay yourself, then you won't do the best work that you can, because you will constantly be worried about where the next paycheck is coming from.
Yeah, absolutely.
We need to take that away from the issue so that we can actually produce some good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that we've been looking at is things like workshops and using theatrical training in terms of teaching soft skills, because there's so many things, and vocational skills. I know personally, having sort of learning difficulties with dyspraxia, my social skills and emotional intelligence, it's better. But thanks to theatre, I learned how to communicate with people, and I learned how to sort of understand emotion and, you know, and things like that. And you learn how to control your emotions a little bit better in theatre, or quite well in theatre, because it's one of the most important things when you're on stage. If you're feeling upset and you have to show a happy character, you have to be able to
do it.
Yeah. And I learned a lot about who I was and myself, because that's you can't be someone else if you don't know who you are. And it was absolutely vital for me in terms of my self-development. And there's a lot of skills you learn in theatre that people with autism or other neurodiverse conditions that can really benefit from. And also in terms of people who are struggling to find work, it helps with things like confidence and, so many. I found a list of something like 25 skills that just theatrical training teaches you that is vital in the work industry that isn't taught in schools.
Mm-hmm. And that there is a lot of things like that, and where we're constantly having conversations about what should and shouldn't be funded in terms of education, then we really need to go to bat for the arts, because it does teach you so much stuff way above and beyond what learning English will teach you. It will give you so much more than that, and it's important, I think, for a nation to have a good artistic grounding throughout the whole of its population, because that everything will enrich society. That's
you
why
can't
you
have
go into things like
you can't have innovation without creativity.
Yeah.
You can't have science without creativity.
Well, this is something that's very interesting with behavioral economics, which, getting onto a pet subject, behavioral economics is It is basically, you might have heard of nudge theory, or you might have heard of framing or something like that. But behavioral economics is really the science of why people do stuff, essentially. Or rather the science of why people buy stuff. And within that, there's so many different things that when I read a book on it, I go, well, hang on, I know this stuff, but why do I know it? Because I've done a degree in performing arts, or because I was in a community theatre, or because and it's those things that I think that the arts can give you a better grounding in than a lot of stuff.
Well, of course, when again going up on stage, when you are, especially in interactive theatre, when you're up on stage, you have to be able to read the person opposite you in any kind of theatre. You have to know their body language. And one of the things I started learning, I mean, is I'm fascinated with forensic psychology and behavioral psychology. It's something I just learned as a hobby, but then found it was incredibly not just useful for myself personally, but also really useful for creating characters and with the work. But it's also, as I was reading it, I'm going, like, very much like you, I'm like, I know this. How do I know this? Oh my gosh, I learned this through theatre. I learned Pussycat's Back. I learned this through She Wants to Be Famous.
Through doing,
Hello, Newt. But yeah, I learned a lot of it through just being on stage and watching the audience and learning, well, if that person's doing that, they're not enjoying themselves, so then I need to give them more attention, or and being able to read an audience and knowing what's funny, what's working, what's not working, and then being able to adapt and adjust and make really quick decisions and problem solving.
But then you have the problem that we run into is that how do you then communicate that to people who are in business, who might then want to buy your products, or and this is where the big disconnect is. If you get, I mean, I've worked in advertising for quite a while. If you do an advertising project and you do a creative for that, so you do maybe a video or a Facebook ad, or a page advert in a thing, you then have to run that by whatever department is handling the budget, or whatever department is releasing you to be able to do that in the first place. When those departments make decisions for themselves, they never have to run it by the creative people. And yet it's that sort of marriage of between art and business that has brought things like advertising, and the art that goes into advertising is phenomenal. But those are areas where people in the arts really need to start looking at if they're then going to build up their own portfolio of paid work. At what point can you then say to a business, we can do this for you, we can provide you with this thing?
With things
Not,
like public speaking as well.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, actors are good public speakers because you have to be.
Mm.
You know, you can't go up on stage and not be. And you learn loads of little techniques and approaches that you can help other people with. But like you said, there's so many other ways that you can make money as an actor or as a creative. But it is very much selling it to the businesses and getting that sort of message across to say, well, actually, you learn these skills. I mean, problem solving, I mentioned earlier, that's a massive part of the arts, because you can't have a theatre show or any kind of entertainment, or any kind of show without something going wrong, usually live, and you
Usually at
have
the
to
last
figure
minute.
it
Yeah,
out. Yeah,
yeah.
usually the last minute, and you have to go, I've been, in one of my shows, I was quite literally in my underwear getting changed for a show, and whilst get to go up on stage. And somebody then came up and went, we've got a massive problem. We have to move the entire dressing room. And I'm like, I'm in my pants, and I had to think quite literally on the fly how to deal with that and get dressed, and set up for the show and manage all the people. And you have to be able to think quickly, and you have to be able to function under stress with it. And these are valuable skills that people don't realize the arts gives you.
And that's where you get this other kind of disconnect between, you selling your stuff to a business is exactly the same as what you need to do in order to sell yourself to an investor.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of the arts now is through investment, or it's through grants or whatever. You need to be able to do that. So, how do you do that? This has been a really interesting chat for me, because I can find this stuff really interesting.
I do as well.
But we have been talking for far too long right now. We really should say goodbye. It's been lovely. We'll probably do another one of these before the whole project ends, and maybe we'll talk about something slightly different. But until then, thanks ever so much for watching.
You're welcome, and thank you. Oh, sorry, I'm sharp.
You haven't been watching. You've been talking.
I've been talking. Yeah.
Do give us a big thumbs up if you've enjoyed the video, or leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget, of course, please subscribe to the channel. Click the little bell icon at the end as well. And every time we put out a video, you will be told that one is there. So you'll never miss anything that we put out. And we do put out quite often. Until next time, thanks ever so much for watching. We'll see you then. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.